Femiglossary with words warning against sexism. 1. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is the manipulation of a person by psychological means to question their own sanity. It is a pattern of emotional abuse in which the victim is manipulated into doubting their own perception, judgment, or memory. This makes the person feel anxious, confused, or even depressed. This expression has its origin in George Cukor's film Gaslight, 1944, whose protagonist was subjected to this process. In this film, a man manipulates his wife into believing she's insane in order to steal her hidden fortune. He hides objects, paintings, jewelry, making his wife believe that she was responsible, even though she does not remember. He also dims the gas light, there was no electricity, and makes her believe that the fire is still glowing as brightly as before. 2. Love bombing. Love bombing is a form of emotional manipulation that is characterized by excessive displays of affection, gifts, and attention at the beginning of a relationship, as a means of gaining control over the other person. It is a very subtle tool to manipulate someone. Through over-loving and over-affectionate attention, the person in question becomes trapped and hooked, and when the love bombing wears off, they feel that they have done everything wrong. So the person doing the love bombing can manipulate and punish with this emotional blackmail. Love bombing is a type of manipulation in which excessive love is shown too early. Psychologists warn that it can be dangerous because the victim becomes involved in a toxic and dependent relationship. 3. ICE law. What is ICE law? ICE law in a couple refers to a behavior in which one or both partners choose to ignore, avoid, or emotionally reject the other. It is as if a barrier of ice was built between them, preventing communication and emotional contact. Sometimes, the victim of this kind of behavior ignores the conflict just because the other has not expressed it openly. 4. Triangulation. Love triangulation is popularly understood as a dynamic in which a person who is in a stable love relationship, or at least it appears to be so, involves a third person in order to achieve a goal with one's partner, usually that of subjugation and manipulation. The triangulator seeks the attention, affection, or validation of this third person outside the main relationship in order to regulate him or herself and or bring about change in his or her main relationship. 5. Ghosting. Ghosting is a modern term that refers to the practice of abruptly cutting off all communication with the person without explanation or dismissal. The term ghosting comes off from the English word ghost, which means ghost and refers to disappearing like a ghost. It is applied in those cases in which you are starting a relationship, and although you believe that everything is progressing correctly, suddenly, one day, just like that, the person disappears. He or she vanishes. It is as if the earth had swallowed them up. 6. Pity play. What is pity play? It is an expression widely used by Americans, which means playing the victim, which means that the abuser will distort the true story to show himself as the damaged side and thus blame the victim. With this behavior, the abuser will show himself as the victim of his victims in order to get support outside the family circle. 7. Micromachismo. Micromachismos are discriminatory behaviors towards women, which, due to their everyday nature, are so naturalized and normalized in a culture that in most cases they go unnoticed by both women and men. 8. Sexist prejudice. Sexism is an attitude based on an assumed inferiority of women as a group. This behavior has been developed throughout history by sociological factors to the point where women have been completely oppressed simply because they are women. First, it is necessary to differentiate between old sexism and modern sexism. Old sexism would be the traditional conception of women's role as inferior to that of men. For example, fairy tales are a source of sexist prejudice. In many fairy tales, princesses are poor and helpless women waiting to be rescued by their brave princes. Modern sexism, on the other hand, is mainly characterized by opposition to feminist demands. This attitude is based on the belief that women are no longer discriminated against, so that any feminist policy or action would be unnecessary. 9. Heteropatriarchy. Heteropatriarchy is an age-old model of social and cultural domination, which justifies the domination role of men over women. This manifests itself in the domination of men over women in the social, labor, political, and domestic spheres. Heteropatriarchy is a form of social organization that subordinates women to men through unequal rights and opportunities. 10. Sticky floor. It is said of the reality whereby women suffer a series of barriers that prevent them from developing in the world of work or in the public sphere. This concept was developed by Catherine White Burhide in 1992 to explain the phenomenon of affecting women as opposed to the glass ceiling. 11. Glass ceiling. Glass ceiling is an American expression dating from the late 1970s. It refers to the invisible barriers to women's promotion in hierarchical structures. It constitutes an obstacle to their professional development within the company and limits their access to positions of responsibility. Women are promoted less than their male colleagues in all social categories. Moreover, they are particularly penalized before the age of 35, i.e., during the period when they are likely to have children. 12. Androcentrism. The tendency to consider men as the center or protagonist of human history and civilization to the detriment of women, whose importance is downgraded or disregarded. 13. Body shaming. The action of criticizing someone on the basis of their body shape, size, or appearance for not having a body that is normative or falls within the established canons of beauty. Many women have been affected by this action. 14. Broappropriating refers to the situation in which a man appropriates an idea originally proposed by a woman and takes the credit and all the merit. 15. Manterrupting. It is defined as the male practice of unnecessarily interrupting a woman's speech repeatedly. 16. Mansplaining. Explaining without taking into account the fact that the person receiving the explanation knows more about the topic than the person explaining it. This behavior usually occurs on a regular basis by a man towards a woman. 17. Manspreading. This is defined as the practice of some men sitting with their legs open, especially on public transport and in other public spaces, and taking up more than their fair share of space. 18. Gender gaps. Gender inequality gaps are the distances that exist between women and men in relationship to access, participation, allocation, use, control, and quality of resources, services, development, opportunities, and benefits in all areas of life. 19. Objectification. Interpersonal sexual objectification is the reduction of a woman to her body or parts of it. This phenomenon can be considered as a form of sexist discrimination, in which a woman is treated differently by minimizing the importance of her internal attributes. 20. Rape culture. Rape culture is a feminist concept that describes rape as a social and cultural problem that is accepted and normalized due to social attitudes about gender, sex, and sexuality. 21. Apparent duals. In the Spanish language, it refers to those pair of words whose meaning changes depending on the sex they designate. In their masculine grammatical form, they adopt a positive or neutral meaning. However, in their feminine grammatical form, they indicate a lower professional category or something degrading. 22. Gender stereotypes. A gender stereotype is a generalized view or preconceived idea about the attributes or characteristics or the roles that women and men possess or should possess or play. A gender stereotype is harmful when it limits the ability of women and men to develop their personal capacities, pursue their professional careers, and or make decisions about their lives. For example, the traditional view of women as caregivers means that childcare responsibilities often fall exclusively on women. 23. Feminazi. The term feminazi is used in a pejorative sense against feminism in general or against some feminists in particular, especially those perceived as radical, on the grounds that feminism does not seek equality between men and women. Its use was popularized in 1992 by Rush Limbaugh, an American conservative, anti-abortion radio host, and political commentator. It is a journalistic invention and the response to a smear campaign directed against feminism from conservative political positions. 24. Femicide. Femicide is the most extreme manifestation of abuse and violence by men against women. It occurs as a consequence of any kind of gender-based violence, such as physical assault, rape, forced childbearing, or genital mutilation. 25. Feminism. Feminism is a political, social, academic, economic, and cultural movement which seeks to create awareness and conditions to transform social relations, achieve equality between people, and eliminate any form of discrimination or violence against women. Therefore, it is not a feminist alternative to machismo. It is a movement that fights against it. 26. Machismo. Machismo is a form of hyper-masculinity used to describe an attitude of male superiority over women with characteristics such as aggressiveness, dominance, bravery, promiscuity, virility, sexism, autonomy, strength, provider role, and restraint in emotional expression. 27. Slut-shaming. Slut-shaming is a neologism used to describe the act of blaming people, most often women, for sexual behavior or desires that are unorthodox or that may be considered untraditional or religious, whether or not they are real. It may also be used in reference to homosexual males, who may face disapproval for promiscuous sexual behavior. Heterosexual males are rarely subjected to this kind of humiliation. 28. Intersectional feminism. Intersectional feminism is based on the assumption that the further a subject moves away from the norm, defined as a white, heterosexual, middle or upper class woman, the more prejudice she faces. Despite this perspective of the feminist movement considers the experiences of all women as equal. 29. Sexist language. Language not only reflects, but also transmits and reinforces the stereotypes and roles historically considered appropriate for women and men in a society. It is discrimination in language based on the sex of people and which benefits one sex over the other. It portrays women as inferior because of their biological differences. 30. Internalized misogyny. It is the involuntary internalization by women of the sexist messages present in our society and culture. What this means is that we ourselves have misogynistic attitudes and thoughts even though we are women. It is involuntary because this sexism present in our culture is taught to us through socialization, that is, learning through social interaction, without us having any say in it. We are not born sexist. It is through observing, learning, and understanding our society that we end up holding common ideas and attitudes with the rest of society, including misogynistic ones. 31. Catcalling. Catcalling is a type of street violence that includes unwanted whistling, offensive comments of a lewd, sexist, homophobic, or transphobic nature, persistent requests demanding a person's name, telephone number, or destination after they have refused to provide such information, descriptions, comments, or demands with reference to sexual acts, stalking, harassment, indecent exposure, public masturbation, groping, sexual assault, and rape. 32. Cryptogamy. Cryptogamy is the recurrent phenomenon throughout history and in most cultures of concealment of women and female reference in different spheres of society, especially those of greater prestige. To name this practice, the poet and philologist Begonia Pozzo and the philologist Carlos Padilla, both professors at the University of Valencia, coined the term cryptogamy and published it publicly for the first time on 5th of February 2020 in an article published in a digital newspaper. On the 27th of November of the same year, the Academia Valenciana de la Lengua approved its incorporation into the Valencian Normative Dictionary.